let's go with this guy, Eddie, that tried to call last week.
Oh boy.
But it sounds like you want to put Matt's bad arguments against the Christian God to bed once and for all. The moral argument specifically. What's up, Eddie? How are you doing?
Well, first of all, let me start by congratulating Jenna on being pregnant. I hope everything is fine with the baby and everything goes well. Well, last time I called, but it didn't seem to go well because I didn't seem to last a lot. I think Matt took offense at something I said. I don't remember the exact details, but
did you start off by talking about how I had been running my mouth off?
I think it was shooting your mouth off, but yeah, basically
shooting my mouth off. Okay.
Either. Yeah. Okay.
Do you understand that that's a weird objection to launch at someone who has hosted a weekly show for more than 15 years to suggest you've been shooting your mouth off? But go ahead.
Well, yeah, I guess it was.
Let's put the past in the past, and Eddie can take me to task with real good argumentation. Go for it.
Yeah. So this is actually much harder because you've used a version of this argument over a long time. So it's going to be harder for me to put it into syllogistic form. But if I misrepresent you, feel free to just jump in and stop me. Okay?
Oh, that's a guarantee. Like if you misrepresent me, I'm going to correct it. Otherwise, we're wasting time.
All right. So basically, what I understand is your argument boils down to this: the Christian God, at least as most Christians understand the God to be, is incompatible either with the quote immorality we observe or evil we observe, or in the actual world, or the morality that's seen in the Bible. Would that be correct?
No.
That's not what you believe in?
You're saying that my position is that the Christian God generally is understood as incompatible with morality in the Bible. No, I don't think I don't think that biblical morality is sound. I don't think the Christian God exists.
That's not what I asked. Are you saying that if the Christian God exists, his existence is incompatible with the evil we observe?
No. I'm not saying that either. Evil we observe may in fact be compatible with a Christian God. I don't know that a Christian God exists.
Okay, then what are your arguments that you use against slavery? What's the problem with slavery in the Bible or in any other moral evil?
So I'm confused. Is this about whether or not God exists, or is this about what my view on morality is? Because it's the two aren't the same.
Well, he says he wants to fight your moral argument.
Well, he also said he wants to fight my arguments against God. I have exactly one argument against the existence of God. And that's the argument from divine hiddenness, which I've used many times. But it's not up to us to present arguments against God. It's up to people to prove that there is a God. And so what I'm saying is that the biblical position on slavery is immoral. Do you agree with me?
No.
So you think it's moral to own people as property and that you can beat them as long as they don't die within a couple of days?
I don't see why. Are you a moral realist? How would that be opposed to?
All I did was ask if you agreed with me that slavery is immoral. I asked if you agreed with. Do you agree with me that owning another person as property is immoral? Do you agree with me that beating another human being as long as they don't die within a couple of days should be unpunishable?
Well, in certain cases, yeah.
In certain cases, yes.
Okay. In what cases is it okay to beat another human being?
When God commands you to.
Okay.
Okay. Can you
how do we know?
That?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to let Jenna take this because I currently have a bet on whether or not I'm going to yell. And when somebody calls into my show to tell me that I'm wrong about morality, and one of the first things we get to is that they're okay with beating people when their God tells them to, I'm just going to let Jenna take it, and I'll just sit over here quietly. Thanks.
But I don't understand. Sorry.
I know you don't understand. That's the problem. Jenna's getting ready to school you, so sit tight.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'd like to hear from you how you can justify beating someone. I'd like to hear that.
Since you are not a moral realist, right? From what I understand, correct me if I'm
let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you.
Yeah, you're the one that just said it was okay to beat people. She's asking you why, and you said when God tells you.
I believe our guide to what's absolutely moral is someone who, by definition, is absolutely moral, which would be the Christian God.
That's not. I'm asking you how you can justify beating someone.
Well, it depends on the reason. If it's God commands.
I'd like to know what that reason is.
Well, I just gave one. If God is
you did give one. You said if God commands it. So how do we know? if God commands it?
Well, that's an epistemological question. If we're agreeing that
it doesn't matter. So here, Eddie, I'm going to help you really quick. It doesn't matter what kind of question it is. We are asking questions to see which of our views is most consistent with reality and reason. If you say it's okay to beat people if God says so, then the next question is, how do we tell, like if somebody beats another person, how do we know whether or not God told them to?
The answer, but you have to listen. The answer isn't it's okay to beat people when we perceive God said so, or when.
That's exactly what you just said.
No,
it's not.
I said when God said so.
Yes,
so,
I'm asking you, and we're asking you, how do you know when God says so? How do you tell the difference between somebody who thinks God told them to beat someone and someone who God actually told to beat someone? And now I'll be quiet. Sorry.
Sorry. So that's a good question, but it's unfortunately irrelevant here because you asked me to give a situation in which it would be moral, and I gave an example. I don't need to give an example of how I would distinguish it.
Okay.
I gave an example, right?
Okay, you gave me an example, and let's talk about that example and whether or not that's a legitimate example. Okay, how do we know objectively whether or not a God has instructed you to beat someone? How can I know that?
How is that relevant to the conversation?
Because you're using it as an excuse to beat someone, and I'd like to know proof that this is actually a thing.
That's not what I said. I said a conditional. If God,
I know that Jen is steering, but you're either going to answer the fucking question or we're going to move on. You don't get to just go, how's it relevant? You asserted that if God tells you to beat someone, it's okay. And we asked, how does someone tell the difference between thinking that God wants them to beat someone or allows it and God actually doing it? And you don't get to just say that's irrelevant. That is the foundation of you. You're offered up your justification, and we don't know how you could ever provide that justification. You might as well be saying it's okay to beat people when the voices in my head say so. And we say, how do we know that the voices in your head said so? And you say that's not relevant.
Look, you're not understanding, okay? The question here is simple. Here is a situation.
I asked you, no. I asked you a question. Do you remember that question?
But it's an epistemological question. It's not
I don't care what kind of question is. I'd like to know if you remember what the question is, and I'd like to know why you won't answer it.
Talking about, okay? You don't know what you're talking about, okay?
Okay, well, you know what? Bye, bro.